Welcome to the Amazon's podcast. I'm Glenn Young, owner of Amazon's fitness magazine. Celebrate the female physique. Amazon'sFitMag.com. Go and subscribe. The podcast is brought to you by Maximus Posing Suits. Celebrate your inner warrior. Custom competition suits for victory on every stage. MaximusPosingSuits.com. And of course, GPS photography and video. Why photography and video? Because if a photo's worth 1,000 words, video is worth 1,000,000. GPSphotoandvideo.com. My guest is a native of Queens, New York. She has worked in the professional and health industry, fitness industry for the last 28 years. She's worked with professional athletes, children, adults, seniors, the military, first responders throughout her career as a personal trainer, cardiac rehabilitation specialist, strength and conditioning coach, nutritionist, gym manager, and owner. She does seminars. She's a workshop developer, writer, lecturer, and she's a graduate of Hofstra University, where she earned her Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science. Not to be outdone, she's a world record holder in push-ups, 1,190. Ladies and gentlemen, IFBB Women's Physique Pro, Gillian Ward.
Thank you for having me, Glenn. I am honored to be here.
Well, I'm so glad to have you back. And if people hear the snoring in the background, that's your dog, your bulldog.
It is.
So you haven't gotten bored with me and gone to sleep.
Hopefully she just snores back there and we don't see anything that she's doing.
There you go. Those dogs have sleep apnea bad. That's an English bulldog, right?
It is. It is.
And how long have you had her?
She will be 10 on July 1st of this year, and I got her when she was 12 weeks old.
That's something. And if you seen Gillian's YouTube channel, even on her Instagram, you'll see the dog in the background every time she's lifting weights or trying to do pull-ups or whatnot. So I'm glad that you're back in the state of North Carolina after a hiatus. You were in Vermont.
Vermont for 3 years.
That's where your husband was stationed at the time. He's a Marine, or was, now he's retired, so that's good.
And it's interesting that we chose to retire here because we left North Carolina when COVID first started. We had orders up to Norwich University in Vermont, and we knew that was the end of his career. And we never thought we would be back here. And what was interesting is this became home. I'm originally from New York City, and he's originally from Baltimore. And we figured retire in the Northeast or someplace where there was more stuff. And what we had realized with the time gone was that North Carolina really became home for us. And it was a little bit surprising for 3 years, you know, we spent like, where are we going to retire? Where are we going to retire to? And we came back and we're about a mile from where we left.
Well, that's great. So you came back to the same house, or had you sold the house?
No, we sold a house when the market was very low, and we bought a house when the market was very high. So we didn't get that lucky.
Well, that's not good. So the last time you competed was 2017?
That is correct.
What you been doing? So, and I guess the big main question is, will you be competing again?
Where do we begin? So let's start with my last competition in women's bodybuilding was the New York Pro in May of 2017. I competed a little bit after that. I did a strongman competition in Tampa, and I did, there was a somewhat short-lived sport called Super League that was pretty big over that summer that essentially merged bodybuilding, so a physique round, although the physique round was not done through like kind of humans judging. It was actually done with computer graphics where you are evaluated for shape and symmetry and that kind of stuff and balance, and body composition, coupled with sort of a CrossFit-like competition. Didn't last very long. I did one competition. I won the world championship in that summer. And that was the end of my competitive career. I don't know that I knew that at the time, but the last time I competed was 2017. It was just before my 40th birthday, and I made a conscious choice at the time to step away from competition. to basically deal with my personal life. I found that I was in a bad marriage at the time, and I found that I was using competing as a way to kind of hide from everything else. And it was time for me to deal with other things. I think as I was approaching 40, I was like, I'm doing really, really well in competition, but there are so many other aspects of my life at the time that I was not addressing. And I knew that if I was ever going to come back to competition, that I needed to get right with myself first, get right in my personal life. And another reason was that at the time in 2017, at the time my marriage was starting to fall apart and my business was somewhat faltering. So I owned a gym business with my ex-husband. And what I realized was that when I was very, very heavily involved in competition, that a lot of other aspects of my life suffered. You only have so much. A human only has so much bandwidth. And I would put all my eggs in the like, I am competing, and bodybuilding is so all encompassing and so comprehensive in all aspects of your life that I allowed other areas of my life to really suffer. Like at the time, if I looked at the books in my gym and saw like membership or sales or client happiness in a relatively small facility, I could see drop-offs at periods of time that I was competing. And I didn't have a lot of staff and I wasn't on top of it. And I think the combination of wanting to address issues in my personal life, turning 40, I shifted focus at the time.
So now when you look at that, obviously that was a regret that you didn't focus more on your business and your personal life. But as a women's physique competitor, that was like your outlet.
It was absolutely my outlet. It was a way for me. This is a little weird. I'm going to talk about some things that are deeply personal here, but women's physique allowed me a place to shine, allowed me a place where attention was paid to me, and that is not something that I got at home. Women's physique allowed an outlet in many ways. One, it allowed me to focus on something with positive that, it occupied there. People could go off and have very, very bad habits. Getting ready for competition in the grand scheme of things is a better habit, but it allowed me, I focused on it and kind of shut everything else out. And, I was trying to understand even my drive to compete at the time. When I say like, would I come back now? Would I be driven to compete now? My drive and reasons would be very different than before. So at the time, I did not feel like my reasons for competing were good reasons, in the sense that my reasons for competing were to escape what was going on in my life. My reasons for competing were to have for some level of attention that I wasn't getting in my life. So I think, now I'm at a very, very good place in my personal life. And should I decide to come back to the stage or any sport for that matter, I would have an entirely different view going into it.
Well, I certainly hope that you do. And I will come back to that question in a minute. But you still hold a world record in a push-up competition, 1,190 in how many minutes?
It's in an hour. So
In an hour. Okay.
I saw a record. So I saw somebody had the record. I previously set a push-up record in 1995. And I have always had, I started gymnastics. I don't know how much of a background any of the listeners know on me, but I started gymnastics as a toddler, basically at 2 years old, and have never stopped and have been an athlete. I'll be 47 in a couple of months. So when I say I stepped away at 40, like at that time, I'd been an athlete for almost 40 years. High pressure competition, often switching from one sport to another. So I previously held a push-up record, and I was rolling off of actually the 2016 bodybuilding season. And another thing to mention is at the time when we talk about bodybuilding, I crossed over multiple sports for the years that I was bodybuilding. So at the same time that I was bodybuilding, I was competing in powerlifting, strongman, Olympic weightlifting, sometimes Super League at the time, and like trying to do all of those things at the same time. And one of the things I learned about bodybuilding is if you want to be great at it, you need to live it, you need to breathe it. There is no visiting bodybuilding. And when I reflect back in my time of competing, I visited bodybuilding. So I would prep for a show and I would do all the things a bodybuilder does other than train like a bodybuilder. That's probably a topic for another time. But I would train really hard. And I would do the diet. And when the show would end, rather than building for the next season or doing any of that stuff, I would shift focus and compete in something else. And I believe that dramatically limited my potential in bodybuilding. And it's something that I could not see at the time. And I have a much better understanding of today. But back to, I went off on a crazy tangent, but coming back, coming back to the push-ups, I had rolled off of a very, very big season in 2016. I had competed at the Arnold. I followed that with a couple of shows after that. And I was having the yearning to do something that had a greater impact than just on myself. To me, bodybuilding, I always had a problem connecting with it because it felt to me to be very selfish. I knew for at least me personally, and I'm not saying that this applies to everybody, when I was in my bodybuilding mode, it was very isolated and it was very selfish. And I needed to take care of me first. And, my passion, although I am very passionate about training, my passion in life is teaching other people, educating, showing people what they could do, enabling them. And that would suffer for me at the times of bodybuilding. So the other thing is I wanted something that was tangible. So in terms of bodybuilding, I would work my butt off for something. And then I wouldn't, if I placed poorly, I defined that entire process by my placing, and I would not feel good about it, even though I had put so much work into it. I wanted to accomplish something that had a tangible metric that I was able to say, like when I was powerlifting, let's say I did a powerlifting competition and I deadlifted 500 pounds. Even if I didn't win, I still deadlifted 500 pounds. And for bodybuilding, that target, I didn't have something to me that was tangible. Like, a week later, I didn't look like that. And again, everything came down to how I placed. So I started kind of exploring breaking the push-up record. And I'm like, I don't just want to do something really cool. How could I connect this to something more important? And one of the things that I'm incredibly passionate about is physical education, physical fitness, and health in youth, and starting young. And I'm like, what if somehow I could connect doing a push-up, which almost anybody could be taught to do a push-up. Anybody could do some version of a push-up, to something greater than that. So I got the idea to try to break the push-up record. I connected with some people in the Carteret County Public School Foundation and started an initiative where I would go and visit the schools and teach a lesson about physical fitness, health, and nutrition, and get everybody moving. It was about getting everybody moving and to teach the students a lesson, that they would go home and get their parents and their families moving. And this went on for a period of about 4 months that I visited the schools. And at the same time I was visiting the schools, I was raising money for the event. And the money went to the Carteret County Public School Foundation. And then I got to help allocate the funds, like based on the schools in need. People would apply for, we need money for this equipment or for this, which was awesome to be part of that process. So, and there was no script for it. Nobody had trained. Like if you train in bodybuilding, it's like, this is what you're supposed to do. Or if you train for powerlifting, how do you train, to set the record in push-ups? Like what is the, what kind of approach? And it was really fascinating to me to kind of go through that process and kind of be like cutting my own path with it.
But when you look at 1,190 push-ups in an hour, that's male and female, correct?
So that is a female record. Not
okay.
That is a female record. Yes.
Okay. Well, I would venture to guess that not many males are going to be able to do that amount, and it got to be pretty close to the male record as well. And you're down in Jacksonville, North Carolina, correct?
Near there, like Emerald Isle. Near there. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. And I remember about when you were, you did CrossFit as well, and then powerlifting. But when you talk about you went to a dark place to do your competitions in bodybuilding, wouldn't you say though that every competitor has to go to that place to be successful? Because that's really what it's about. And yes, it's selfish. Yes, it's egotistical, but it's very therapeutic as well. But do you feel that helped you your competition despite the sacrifice or the loss of personal time or to your business? Don't you have to be that focus, single point focus to do what you need to do?
I agree that you do, or you will not. I agree that that focus is absolutely necessary. To me, it's like, how long, what am I getting in return from it? So by giving up other aspects of my life, which I did for that single-minded focus, what else, what am I sacrificing? Like, what is bodybuilding ultimately doing for me? Or what is competing in bodybuilding ultimately doing for me? Is it paying my bills? It's not. It
Mhm.
is, if it is not doing those things, and I had to take a really mature look at it and say, what am I getting from this? And what is it that I want? And really, the ultimate question for me was, is this still bringing me joy? Is competing in
Right.
bodybuilding bringing me joy? And I
Right.
found for me the connection of just, like I said, wanting, yearning. I came from, a lot of sports. My background is gymnastics and track and field, and the other sports that I, participated in, again, CrossFit, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, was it's very, very different. It's like you either win or you lose, and it's very, very clear. And bodybuilding was becoming unhealthy in that I was defining myself like through some of the results that I was getting and stuff. So I'm like, I'm not winning. So I don't feel good about this. There was a lack of clarity to me in what the judges were looking for. I could look back now and look at my photos and say, you know what? I didn't deserve to win. At the time, when I
Mhm.
left bodybuilding in 2017, that is not how I felt. It takes a while to look at yourself through a different lens. So I could reflect now and say, you know what? My lower body was underdeveloped and my conditioning was not there. I couldn't see that at the time. And some of that is with bodybuilding is my ego at the time really, really clouded that. If you want to be
Mhm.
great at doing something, you practice and you hone that craft. When I was a bodybuilder, and I mean, this is, people are just going to laugh at me for even saying this. Like, I didn't train body parts. I still trained. I
Mhm.
went to the gym, I snatched, I clean and jerked, I lifted heavy, I did gymnastic skills, I trained like an athlete. And like the craziest thing, and early on, I was given some pretty good advice. Like, you want to be a good bodybuilder? Like, I couldn't, here's the thing. If I wanted to be great at CrossFit back at the time, I couldn't train like a bodybuilder and be great at CrossFit. If I wanted to be a power lifter, I couldn't but in bodybuilding, for whatever reason, it did not for me sink in at the time that if I was going to be exceptional, I had to practice the entire practice. So, like, looking back now, I'm able to see that. But at the time, I was very disillusioned. I'm like, I'm not doing well. It's not clear what the judges are looking for. And I missed something where there was clarity. You run a race, the fastest time wins. You do
Mhm.
something, you lift at a meet, and the highest total wins the meet. And that was somewhat maddening for me because I was putting in all of this effort and it was so unclear what was the look and or what was being rewarded. And ultimately, as I moved into my last season, I brought the look to the stage that made me happy. I stopped worrying, the judges want more condition, the judges want this, the judges want that. And I was like, I could only bring my very, very best self. And I did. In my last year of
Mhm.
competition, I brought to the stage what I believed was my best self. And I still, again, I came to placing. I did well. I didn't do as well as, for
Mhm.
I can laugh at myself now. In the grand scheme of things, I did very well in bodybuilding. Not as well as I thought that I deserved at the time, but it has taken me years to recognize that what I thought I deserved, I did not.
So I gotta ask, you came in into bodybuilding. You talked about your gymnastics background.
Yep.
Why didn't you come in on fitness?
I
What
had
was your
cons-
gateway into women's bodybuilding or women's physique, I should say?
I had considered this switch, and
Mhm.
at the time that I was getting out of the sport, I had considered the switch, and then I went through a divorce and losing my business, and a big gap of time had passed. But fitness is absolutely where, if I came back, I feel like that is probably where I belong. So
Okay.
The gateway is very interesting. At the time when I got into bodybuilding, so I did not get into bodybuilding until 2014. At the time, I was a world record holder powerlifter and very, very top of powerlifting, on the somewhat the other side of my CrossFit career into Olympic weightlifting. And my
Mm-hmm.
ex-husband deployed, and I lost my training partner, and I was starting to get scared about lifting heavy alone at the gym. And I'm like, I don't have a group to lift with. And interestingly enough, I trained a figure competitor that was interested in learning how to squat. So she came into she's like, I want to learn how to squat correctly. So she said to me, she's like, you should do this women's physique thing. There's a relatively new category. She showed me, pictures of Dana Lynn Bailey. She's like, you should do this. And I was thinking, wow, that might be a pretty good change. It'd be really, really fun to go and do this one show. And I could train for something, and it doesn't have to be scary. It's not getting under a heavy squat by yourself. So I trained for the North Carolina, the state show, and building kind of took off. I had never come into it with the intention of doing anything more than a single show. And I'm just going to be honest, it's not a good aspect of my personality to share, but I won the show and I got bit by the bug because I was good at it. I'm being totally honest. I was like, okay. And the trajectory for me happened, very fast. I went from my first show to my first pro show in 6 months' time. So, when I say that I visited, I don't even feel like I should have a spot on this podcast. I feel like I was like I said, a visitor in bodybuilding. And I really was in this sport from 2014 to 2017. And
Well, of course you have a spot on the podcast because from my first time that I interviewed you and we did the photo shoot. So of course I was going to reach back to you. So you absolutely deserve a spot on this podcast. So don't think of it that way at all. But I got to ask, so you coming back in 2024 to compete as fitness?
I don't know if I am coming back. Fitness
What would bring you back?
I have this support now, and I have this support at home, and I have stability. So if I was ever going to do it, I think now would probably be the time.
Okay. So let's pick a show. Let's go.
I think it is understanding for me, just respecting how much it truly takes to come to the stage. Yeah. It is not, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Some of that is looking at a time block in your life and saying, for this amount of time, I can prioritize this thing. So it's a little bit of that. It's a little bit scary because for me, bodybuilding, it was synonymous. So bodybuilding and a dark time in my personal life, I connected them together. And I am now recognizing that one does not mean the other. But for many years, I had a difficulty because to me, I associated bodybuilding with kind of a very, very dark time in my personal life. And again, I don't know what it is to compete in bodybuilding with a different life. And I think if I'm being completely honest, I am afraid to alienate the people in my life. I'm afraid to not be, when I was competing, I did not like the person that I was in terms of being good to people. I have a flourishing business right now. Like my brain cells weren't there. I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of public speaking. And it feels good to feel good. Competing when you are, and that was the other thing that I had a difficult time reconciling, when you're putting what is your best self in terms of the visuals of it, the aesthetics of it on stage, like at least for me, I did not feel good. So, I couldn't think straight. When I was prepping for the Arnold in 2016, there was a couple weeks out, and my gym actually, we moved to a larger location. So a whole bunch of people pitched in and moved the gym. I have no recollection of moving the gym. There were times that I would drive someplace, which is normal for, very, very strict dieting, or I would go to drive someplace in the car. I'd be 5 minutes into the trip and have no idea where it was that I'm going. And I look at right now, to be exceptional, it is extreme to be exceptional. Am I willing, to give up or to walk away from those things? And what is it that, like, I know that I'm not going to be able to, to write or to do certain things at a time when the
Mhm.
diet is the toughest. So for me, it's a little bit of weighing that out. It's a little bit of fear. The other thing is I also believe that the level of competitors, I believe that I was at a time in the sport, and
Mhm.
it's leveled up since then. I mean, I've been around
Yeah.
in sport a long time. When I say that, like, my powerlifting records have fallen, like,
Mhm.
each generation that comes brings something even better than the last. And I don't know that my physique or what I could achieve with my physique is competitive in today's time, but I don't know that it matters to me. To me, if I
Yeah.
get back on stage, it would honestly be about the experience, about coming back with a different outlook, coming back in a positive place, and showing my best self, even though I don't believe that I would be competitive.
From your bio, one of your inspiration says comes from the Greek philosopher Socrates.
Yes.
No man has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical training. It is a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable.
Mhm.
So that being said, when you look at the writing, lecturing, are you still training competitors?
I
Are
am.
you preparing people? Okay.
I do. I do. So my business, I was during COVID and during Vermont, I was completely online for a couple of years and not in person at all. I didn't have a lot of opportunity up there. I did
Hmm.
some coaching with a cheerleading team at Norwich University. And then when I got back to North Carolina, I really just wanted to be hands-on with people again, like
Right.
in-person coaching. So my business is a combination of online coaching, both of competitors,
Hmm.
and just regular people. It is not purely
Lifestyle. Yes.
lifestyle. It could be lifestyle. It could be somebody that's 60 years old and wants to do a handstand for the first time, or
Hmm.
somebody that's um, a lot of, like, I would say, health related stuff. Um, More lifestyle and health than bodybuilding. I do have a few bodybuilding clients,
Hmm.
and there are parts of the competition prep that, like, I will outsource. Like, I work with Amanda Harris with posing, and some
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
this I recognize now at this point that I do not know everything, and then so I will team up with other people.
Right. But you're also a nutritionist, so you
I
know the
am.
whole game and
Yeah.
what it takes to get on that stage, but the nutritionist aspect as well in
So
recovery.
that is interesting. This year, I prepped for the first time a vegan client, and I am just under, like, I've always felt like there is no one way to do things. At the end of the day, everybody is an individual, and there are many
Hmm.
different ways to get to the same place. And people are like, "What's your philosophy?" And, like, I'm like, "I
Hmm.
don't." My philosophy is consistency, is to keep it going and find what's working. And, like, I may prep differently now. My diet
Hmm.
may different now at 47 or something than it was at 35. The body constantly evolves. And I don't think there is, like, when you're like, what's your method? I'm like, my method is, like, lighting the spark for somebody and showing them that they are capable of more and empowering them to do the things and good decision making. And to me, there's not a whole lot of black and white in this. Like, eat this, don't eat that. Like, it just,
Hmm.
I, no judgment.
But you as a nutritionist and you
Mhm.
got a vegan client, I
Yep.
gotta ask the question: how do you get the protein into a vegan diet? Well, a bodybuilding diet, but they're vegan. How do you get what they need in the tank to do what they need to do on stage?
So we have, like, an ideal of what ideal protein is, but for me with
Hmm.
her, it's more about we're not going to hit the same targets that I would with somebody that is not vegan. But what if I could get
Hmm.
her to double her protein? So, like, let's
Right.
say she's she's might not be hitting, a gram per pound of body weight or anything near that, and of course I wanted to like focus on whole foods, reduce bloating. But what if, with her, it's like, well, what if we could get close to those numbers? And for her, like her diet, people might look at it and be like, oh my God, her diet was still only, 10% or 15% protein or whatever it was. It was an improvement from where it was at, and it was what worked for her. At the end of the day, she wasn't going to give up being vegan to compete in building.
Right.
So it was a learning experience for me also, that there are not necessarily absolutes. We have recommendations. You need this much protein. It was her first show. We're not talking about, and as she evolves through her career, that diet may be different, but where are we starting and how do we improve on that?
And what category will she be competing in?
Bikini.
Okay.
So, I did not have a female. So competing in bikini, I don't make a giant generalization with it. It's probably different prepping a vegan than competing in women's bodybuilding.
So yeah, when you talk about, could you prep a vegan women's bodybuilder or women's physique, when you look at the prep, on average anywhere from 16 to 25 weeks, where with a bikini, what, 8 to 12 weeks? Am I in the ballpark with that?
We went a little bit longer. I mean, and again, is where is somebody starting from for that prep?
But it's her first show, so yeah.
First show, and where is she starting from? But it just, there's so many absolutes and things. And what I realized is the best way to learn is to keep the most accurate records that you could possibly keep and learn from that. I started keeping training journals when I was in 5th grade. So when someone's like, Gillian, how did you set? I've set pull-up records, I've set all kinds of other stuff. And it is being able to go back and study and stuff and make improvements from it. Like when people you're like, well, what are you eating? And they've never actually looked at what it is that they are eating. Like I have records and I'm like, well, this worked, this didn't work. And you go back at it and you evaluate it. So the diets, I don't believe there are magic numbers for everybody. So take a look at what they're doing and make small adjustments from there.
I got you. Who do you like working better with? The youth, competitors, or just everybody in general?
I like working with people that are honest. Anybody that is honest, that wants to work, where the most important thing in a coaching relationship is trust. So to me, it is about building that trust and somebody that is going to be completely honest with me. And I like the challenge. I like the diversity of, anything from somebody, probably one of the most rewarding clients I ever worked with was a woman at the old gym that joined in her early 80s, joined the strength training program. And wanted to learn barbells. And it was what she wanted to be able to do was go up at church on Sunday morning and accept communion without somebody holding her up. And to me, that is so rewarding to me to have a client like that, or a client that gets their first pull up or a positive experience. So to me, it's the client that I want to work with is a client that is just I am at a loss. I am at a loss for words. But
well, someone that's dedicated, that is not just giving you lip service. Hey, I want to do this, and then you get a couple of workouts in, and they say, "Oh, this is not for me." So because I think there's a thought process that, oh, I can do this. This is very easy, but you got to put the work in, and it takes time to say, okay, you didn't gain these 100 pounds overnight. It's not going to take overnight to lose it. So,
and it's honestly,
with that,
I find that as the amount over time, the best thing I could do as a coach is manage expectations and tell a client, this is what I can do for you, and this is what I can't do for you. At the end of the day, I am providing guidance. I am providing some level of support. I am providing, a framework of something, but it is up to the client. And I think, there is no magic. To me, the magic is not in the prescription that I give. There's no magic in, the diet that I give somebody versus somebody else. For me, a lot of it, in being a good coach is being able to read between the lines, ask the right kind of questions, really understand like what compliance is about, and how to encourage a client and how to keep them going and keep motivated. Like there is no people like, well, this coach knows exactly what to do for reverse dieting, or this coach is great with macros. It's not about being macros. It's about being great with people.
That relationship, you're absolutely right. And building the chemistry together to make it happen. Women's physique division. What do you feel is the state of the women's physique and your thoughts? Basically, when we had Jack and Ann to Tony, Midwest NPC, recently came out and said, hey, ladies are not showing up at the shows. Unfortunately, you guys as a whole haven't been showing up at the shows. Your participation turnout has been trending downward severely over the last couple of years. This year, the numbers have been really bad at some events up to this point. Promoters invest much money and time in carrying it as a division. To only have some horrible turnouts is very unfortunate, and I do love the division so much. With this being said, Ann and I will no longer be carrying the Pro Women's Physique division in St. Louis, and will replace it with another division. Also, I hope the Omaha Pro numbers are good, because if they aren't, I will have no choice but to remove the division there as well and replace it with another pro division. I won't be adding Pro Women's Physique division to any other pro events we are doing. And I hope to see you in Omaha. And we love the girls to death. Let's support your division and support the promoters who support you. Give me your take. It's almost like deja vu. Last year, everybody was saying, well, women's bodybuilding not showing up at shows. And now here we are a year later, and we're talking about women's physique division.
So this is all just obviously my opinion, but that it is
twofold. I would love to hear your opinion. Yeah.
One of them is that women's physique does not receive the same type of over previous years. So to me, I see this as a result of what we have been shown previous years. Previous years, the prize money has not been in women's physique, or not the same prize money as there is in other categories. It has not been given a level of special attention in, wellness has gotten really big, and some people have done tremendous things for women's bodybuilding. And it was pulled in previous years from several really, really big shows. So I think as a women's physique competitor, looking forward, you're like, they're not really paying any attention to us. They're not rewarding us financially. And we don't even get to do stuff like compete at the Arnold. So I think, bodybuilders have the most amazing ability to transform their physiques. So if you're a women's physique competitor looking, you may be like, you know what, I'm going to switch categories because they're just paying no mind over here. So some of it, I believe one side is just the result over several years of them not rewarding women's physique and placing the emphasis in other areas. So, and I think the other side of it is women's physique really, really blew up when they canceled female bodybuilding. So, and it was a time women's physique blew up. It's like, well, we're going to redefine this, and they're going to be smaller and softer, and women's bodybuilding is not going to exist. So, you come down from bodybuilding, women go up from figure. But I have watched over the years, women's physique have a very, very difficult time defining itself. And that is what I struggled with. What is the look? We have timeless physiques that we have seen that are just absolutely tremendous in women's physique, but that person that wins Olympia is not always representative of the class as a whole. So that's what I have seen. It has been a somewhat ambiguous category of how big how conditioned women's physique competitors, at least in my opinion, are often even more conditioned than female bodybuilders. So the whole category
Yes.
kind of has your head spinning and asking
Hmm.
yourself, like, what is this? And part of the reason I left it was like, I asked myself, like, what is, I don't even know what it is that I am trying to achieve. So again, I think
Right.
twofold. I think having previously been somewhat kind of canceled or not rewarded is like over time, women are making a decision to go elsewhere. And then the part of it where, like, if I look at just a standalone women's physique competitor, like I am likely to be like, is she, some of them look like they could be put in figure, some of them look like they could be bodybuilding. So I don't know
Right.
that the category, at least in my opinion, ever had a very, very firm definition, or at least it was not judged based on the standards.
Right. And one of the biggest standards that jumped out when it women's physique, at least in 2017, was no striated glutes. And that's obviously flipped. That was the biggest thing that I saw to change, because now you're right. A lot of the women's physique could very well go up and compete well in women's bodybuilding, namely Ashley Jones. So
Yeah.
then it's like women's physique has become like the minor leagues. Uh, and I guess that's a bad description, but they're pulling from the minor leagues to come up to the majors, and the majors being women's bodybuilding. Do you think both categories can coexist? Do you think one's going to cancel out the other, or do you think both of them could be canceled out?
What I think and what I want to happen may be two different things. I
Tell me
would like
both.
I would like to see it continue to exist, but I think some of that comes down to judging based on the standard. And if you're not judging based on the Chan standard, change the standard. So if you
Right.
read, like, I came in, like, in today's day, I would absolutely not be hard enough to compete, in women's
Hmm.
physique. I never had striated glutes. And that is like, now, I mean, it's like, what are you even doing on stage without striated glutes? So if that is
Right.
not that's being judged on, if that's not, then change the definition. Allow people to know what it is they're being judged on. So, my personal opinion, I believe, as written, the categories are different. As written in,
Right.
what women's physique says, this is what women's bodybuilding says, but it's not the way judging goes. I would like to see both of them to continue to coexist. But it broke my heart that women's bodybuilding like was canceled in fate, or it's
Right.
like, well, we're going to do this women's physique thing. We're going to take the pinnacle of the women's physique that ever were away because
Right.
people don't want to look at women that muscular. Let the other people decide whether they want to come and watch that. So I
Right.
think women's physique came out of something that wasn't, in my opinion, a very good decision at all. And it has been very good to see the support that's been given to women's bodybuilding in the last 5 years, and watch that come back. So
Right.
I do think it's possible that, I don't know that a category will go away, because all of these categories, at least at the NPC level, the more categories, the more competitors, the more money
Right.
that comes in. So to get rid of a category, we may not see it as much at the pro level, but if you're talking about paying entry fees, and that's how shows exist, we're probably not going to get rid of anything.
Right. Two more questions. First, um,
Talking
what
so
is
much.
the happy medium? Well, we'll continue on. Don't get me wrong. But two questions I want to get out of you. Um, what's the happy medium? What's the compromise for promoters to take the risk to continue to invest in women's bodybuilding? And the other part of that is, to what is the part for women's bodybuilding and women's physique? Prize money, are the shows too early? What would be you as a women's physique to say, okay, this is what I would like to see. This is what needs to happen. And more of us will show up at the shows. So hit on that for me.
I recognize that prize money is largely connected to what
Hmm.
ticket sales is. And I mean, so that is a hard thing. Like, the part of me that is an athlete wants to see women's bodybuilding, women's physique, rewarded in the same ways as bikini is, as wellness is. But I
Right.
also understand, like, the like economy, and I understand where, so it is. it is very, very difficult because I see all sides of that. I see, if it's not bringing in the money, that, as an athlete, I want to see them continue to have it. I mean, what we could do, like, I mean, what the women can sign up for the shows that are available, but
Right.
it is devastating when you see the numbers low. It is just, I don't know how to fix it. I know that when I
Right.
see that, it just makes me sad. And to see, I was not a female bodybuilder at the time that women's
Mhm.
bodybuilding all but dissolved, but it
Right.
was just like, it was dissolved. Like, I mean, I look at, a few times after that, I worked out in Las Vegas and stuff, and I met Iris Kyle a
Right.
few times. And I've spent so much
Mhm.
time thinking about what it must have been like for her, and what it must have been like for somebody to say to you, like, you're canceled. You're at the very, very top of this or the sport. I don't want to see anything like that happen again. Um, I don't follow it closely enough to have an informed opinion. So I'm not going to offer something and say this, that, or the other about it, because I don't feel like, I don't know enough about it.
Right. Well, I definitely don't want to see either division go away. And I hope that basically just have like a summit between the competitors and the promoters, and let's work it out to continue to get them more shows, to get prize money, to allow them the time to get ready for the show. But if you know a show like the Pittsburgh Pro, we knew the Pittsburgh Pro was coming a year out,
Yeah.
and just to have 3 competitors in women's physique, you know, and then what is it going to take? Because there is a big risk for promoters to put that sanction fee and that money out there. Um, and don't collect on, you promote the show and then you only get 3 competitors. And you could look at Triple O Dynasty, the number of competitors, women's physique and women's bodybuilding, and that show was planned 2 years out. So
It
that
also,
that's sort of tough.
if there's failure to not, like, we live in a time that it would be easy enough with
Mhm.
technology to ask the women. Like, I mean, like, just to poll. Like, I mean, I think about, people do this on social media every single day. Like, the
Right.
IFBB has a list of every single competitor. We get emails. Like, how about a
Exactly.
survey every now and then to speak? How about a conference of some sort
Right.
where you invite everybody
Yeah.
together, a summit, or to feel like you're part of a larger community? Like, the information, there are plenty of people that would love to speak up about it, and I'm honored to have an opportunity to speak to it. But,
Right.
like, just to be able to, like, other, like, let's find out, and they need to ask those questions.
Right. And it's not something that would have to be publicized. I mean, it can be closed door. I mean, you want to air your dirty laundry, but yeah,
It could be
competitors in the room and say, "What do you want?" You know, and then the promoters could say, "Well, this is what we want," um, and then work it out. Because the whole basis of Amazon's fitness magazine is based on women's physique and women's bodybuilding, because people didn't want to see it. So that's why I was here. So I mean, obviously, I have a vested interest. So I'm hoping that it'll get better and they can work it out, because I really want to see it. And obviously, I don't want it to go away because I got a vested interest. Last question, and this is more like your opinion as well. In shows where the number of competitors didn't show up, and they say, okay, you trained all this, but not enough competitors show up, so we're not going to award a pro card. That's one part. The other part of the coin is, or the other side of the coin to me is, if enough competitors do not show up for a pro show, you're going to win the show. But guess what? We're not going to award an Olympia qualification because it wasn't competitive. 3 people showed up, 2 showed up. Should you award an Olympia qualification based on that? Just like much like if they don't show up, you shouldn't award a pro card. Your thoughts, and I'll let you get out of here on that one.
I don't think a competitor, when you pick a show date, you train for months for that,
Mhm.
and you have no idea how many people are going to be there. And I mean,
Right.
to be punished because other people, I mean, again, this is another thing where we could speak to both sides of it. So you do all this training, you get there, and then you don't get an opportunity. It's like, I'm completely timed, so that I could get this Olympic qualification, and then people don't show up and you get punished. So that is devastating as a competitor. But we have also seen people get through at times where the competition wasn't there. And we've seen this recently on social media where someone could be like, how did that person get a pro card? Or how did that person win this?
Right.
So like
they showed up, but they didn't show out.
Right. And it is such a complex thing. I mean, especially competing as a pro, like you're going to a show with the hopes of nailing down an Olympia qualification. To me, it would be absolutely devastating putting myself in that position, going to a show. I can't control how many people be there. And I mean, back to the point of why, for me, bodybuilding was so complex in that. Like if I went to a track meet and I set my record for the mile, doesn't matter if I'm the only one that showed up that day or not, I did something. And that's the thing. Bodybuilding at the end of the day is subjective, and you're compared to the people that are next to you. Not always the standard, but you're compared to whoever showed up on that day. And I think if someone showed up on that day, or whatever, the best person that showed up on that day, my opinion is that's the winner. And whether that winner is a pro card or whether that winner, goes on and gets an Olympia qualification, you showed up on the day and you brought the best that day.
Gillian Ward, thank you so much for being so candid. Thank you for coming on. And I sincerely hope that you change your mind and compete this year.
If I decide to, I will. My family will know first, but you will be the second person to know that. I know that. I don't know whether it is going to be women's physique. I don't know whether it's going to be fitness. My days as an athlete, I know, are not done.
Good stuff. I'll look forward to it.
Thanks
for coming on.
Thank you.
No problem. We'll talk again soon. And we still got to do that photo shoot too. So let me know.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Gillian. Talk soon.
Have a good night.
Coming up on Wednesday, Hella Trevino is back, and we're going to talk to her and see what's going on, as now everyone's in heavy, deep prep. And we're coming up with the Olympia, and that's at 6:30. That I'll be talking to her 6:30 Eastern. So make sure that you tune in. And then at 7:30 Eastern, Chanel Quinns will be joining me from Aesthetic Massage. She's got a lot going on as an entrepreneur. So I'm thrilled to talk to her. She's in chiropractic school. So going to be exciting. So make sure you guys tune in. I'm Glenn Young for Amazon's Fitness Magazine. Celebrate the female physique. Subscribe to Amazon'sFitMag.com.